Justin Bathen, a professor at the University of Kentucky and a person who's been building and running online programs now for a long time. I wanted to do a quick share about how I help run synchronous classes as Dr. Hollis, who's helping to lead the work for you, thought that might be useful. So let me give a little setup and then we'll dive into it. So setup here is that we at the University of Kentucky, we of course run Canvas as our learning management system. So students are working through asynchronous work in Canvas. We meet with them once every 2 weeks. We have a 3-hour class meeting once every 2 weeks. So there's a mixture of synchronous and asynchronous going on. When we're synchronous, we're meeting on Zoom as our platform of choice for those synchronous meetings. And as you'll see, I really love Zoom because I love the ability to do breakout groups. That's the core feature in Zoom that makes it such a great teaching platform in a synchronous way. Because as you'll see in the agenda that I'm about to share, what we really try to go for that is proven to be a great online learning modality for us is when we are synchronous, we are not using that time to do the lecture. Right? We flip the instruction, we're doing the lecture, we're doing the readings in an asynchronous way. When we're together, that's the time for activity, for discussion, really where students are doing most of the work and most of the teaching, most of the conversation, and where we are simply, as the instructors, trying to reinforce the learning. All right? And so the way that we have been successful is that here I'm sort of showing you a Google agenda that we use that really tightly structures the synchronous time together and makes it very activity driven. Okay, so this, what you're seeing now, is a agenda that I used in class on Monday night of this week. So this is not some sort of super special, never been used before agenda. This is just the one I taught from this week, just to give you a sense of every single class runs this way and has a similar kind of look and feel agenda to it. All right, so as we get into this agenda, you can see like I'm giving them a sense of what it is. As we get into the agenda right away, the first task I have for them is to jump out to a couple of cases that have happened recently in Texas. So this is a school law course for principals, a graduate course. And so I give them 2 cases, so these link out to videos, right? All of this is pre-built in advance by you, the instructor, right? So this video is pre-built, it's ready to go.
I just read an unbelievable article.
Of course, there's an ad, right? But so they'll watch that video and then watch the other video. And then I've given them a task in small groups, so now we're out in breakout groups. Do you agree with each of the teacher recommendations? And of course, more important to me was the legal issues at play in each of the cases that came out in those videos, right? So that's just like our opening task. But you can see I put everything in this big orange box because orange indicates activity to them. And so when they know when we're into the orange box part of the agenda, that's a them responsibility. They're not sitting and getting. It's you got to get to work and come up with some ideas. Okay, so this particular class happened to be about teacher hiring and firing and discrimination issues. And so the next task that we went into to reinforce teacher interviewing, principals have to interview teachers and so make sure they're not discriminating in those contexts. I had pre-recorded a mocked up video several years back, so this video is actually really old. But what it does is it links to a mock interview where the interviewer does a bunch of things wrong. All right, and so their job is to issue spot all of the things wrong that interviewer was doing in that interview. But it's not as useful to just try to have a whole class discussion around that. It really is useful to have breakout teams working on a task, right? So their task is to identify the issues. So to help them with that task, you can see here where I link to an embedded Google spreadsheet. That Google spreadsheet has the tasks embedded in it. The groups are assigned at the bottom, right? So each group knows where they need to go. So then there was 4 groups. And those groups are then identifying all of the issues that they are seeing. They are then linking to, what were the protected classes implicated and what specific statutes are helping to provide legal guidance in that particular case. So all of those pieces are sort of pre-built. They're working in this spreadsheet as they're out in small group. And then when we get back together in whole group, we sort of share a couple of ideas from the spreadsheet. All right, we do that kind of a format, often to a spreadsheet to work on something, and then back into whole group to share out all the time. That is a great way to engage your learners in your synchronous sessions in some kind of a task. Let me just quickly run you through other things that we did just to give you a sense of it. So during this part, we had a Supreme Court opinion this year on LGBTQ rights. So we wanted to discuss that, and sort of, since it's a current event and all that kind of stuff, and bring in some issues around protected classes and discrimination. But then you can see I get right back out into the collaborative doc task space. So here, one of the jobs that principals have is explaining to their new teachers what tenure is, when they're going to get tenure. For all of you at Regis, maybe you have a tenure system, right? And you have to explain that from time to time. It does not mean 10 years. So what I do is I pre-built a Google drawing for them. And then in those small groups, they go into the Google drawing, and then they collaboratively come up with a way to show that teachers are achieving tenure. And you can see, so that was the first one, and here's a second one, right? So as a small group, they're trying to figure this out, like how do we want to explain tenure to other teachers in our building? So just showing you some examples. What you can see is there's a whole lot of variation here. There's a lot of creativity going on. To get this kind of creativity, they have to be working hard together in their breakouts, right? So we're moving in and out of breakout very rapidly. This one was actually like something you would put on a website. It was so good. And then I show them my own version of this so that they can sort of see, like, here's how I would have drawn and done this task. And we can explain that concept and really reinforce how tenure works and what it is. This task is around going out to employee handbooks. And so I've pre-linked all of the employee handbooks of the different school districts that we're investigating. So they then sort of populate their names into this column. I use that to assign them to the breakout groups, and then they go out and they work on that task and bring it all back. Here is more embedded YouTube videos, right, where I'm giving them sort of YouTube scenarios, and we can sort of discuss around those YouTube scenarios. YouTube is an absolutely critical teaching tool. So the more authentic you can make those YouTube videos, the better as well, right? So this one has an ad too. I'll skip it. But that was like a local news report that I brought in that really makes the conversation authentic and relevant and sort of hyper-local. Here's, once again, we're doing a YouTube-based case scenario where we're walking through a legal test. This one's around teacher expression rights. And so sort of working our way through these legal tests based off of a scenario as a group, as a team, sort of really trying to reinforce learning that would have already been introduced in Canvas. And then I had one more activity here at the end around some teacher dismissal things. Okay, so the point is all of this is pre-built into this Google agenda. Every single synchronous class has one of these sort of very tight, detailed, pre-built agendas, and we spend our class working through those agendas to really reinforce learning in an engaging way. We have found that to be a great way to make your synchronous sessions really engaging for students and to sort of replicate some of what you might have experienced in an on-site environment kind of classroom setting. So I hope that was helpful for all of you. Google Docs, Google Docs, Google Docs, such great synchronous tools. The more creative you can be with Google Docs and breakout groups, the better your classes are going to go in those synchronous formats. Thanks for listening. Good luck to all of you at Regis this year as you move to online. We will get through it. We'll get through it together.